And example 4, part A, okay, says, part A says for y equals x squared, find y if x is negative 2. So they're telling us that x is negative 2. Well, we're trying to figure out what y is, and we know that x is negative 2. So they want to know what's negative 2 squared. Okay? And I put the negative 2 in parentheses because this means I need to take negative 2 and square it. It means negative 2 times itself. Okay? So they want to know what is negative 2 times negative 2. Well, 2 times 2 is 4. And a negative times negative is a positive. So y equals positive 4. So basically what they're saying is negative 2 squared is positive 4 because a negative times negative is a positive. Okay, so then for B, it says x squared equals 9. And then we want to know x can be which two numbers. So we want to know what times itself equals 9. Okay, we've done these before, these square root sort of things. It means what times itself equals 9. Well, before we knew that 3 times 3 gives me 9. So that's one answer. So x can equal 3, because 3 times 3 is 9. However, now we were multiplying integers. Well, I know I can take a positive times a positive and get a positive number. But what other kinds of numbers can I multiply to get a positive number? Well, I should also know that a negative times a negative equals a positive. So that means that negative 3 times negative 3 is also going to give me positive 9. Okay? Because 3 times 3 is 9, and a negative times negative is a positive. So x can equal 3 and negative 3. Because I can take a positive times a positive to get a positive, and I can also take a negative times negative and get a positive. Alright? Okay, let's keep moving on. Okay, objective 2 is to multiply and divide terms. Okay? So, part A. I've got 6x squared y times negative 2 xyz. Okay? Now what I'm going to do when I multiply these is I'm going to multiply things that are the same. Okay? So I'm going to multiply this 6 and this negative 2 because they're both numbers. So I'm going to take 6 times negative 2. And I'm going to take letters that are the same, multiply them together. So like x squared and x. So I'm going to have x squared times x. I've got a y and a y. So I'm going to have y times y. And then I have just one z. Alright? Well, 6 times negative 2, that's negative 12. X squared times x, remember those exponent rules. This right here is like x to the first power. So when I multiply the same base, I'm going to take the exponents and add them together. So it's going to be x to the 2 plus 1. Same thing here. This is y to the first times y to the first. So I'm going to take y to the 1 plus 1. And then I still just have one z here. Okay, remember how I showed you to show the work for these exponent rules like this. So when it's the same base and you're multiplying, you're going to add those exponents together. Show me this step here. Well, negative 12 stays. X to the 2 plus 1, that's just x to the third. And y to the 1 plus 1, that's just y squared. And there's still only one z. And here's my answer. I can't do anything else with that. Okay? That's all I can do. Right there. Alright, let's do a division problem now. Dividing terms. So I've got 6x squared y over negative 2 x y z. Alright, again I'm going to divide terms that are the same. Okay, so I can take numbers and divide by numbers. So I'm going to take 6 divided by negative 2. Now I've got x's. I'm going to take x squared divided by x, which is the same as x to the first. And I've got y divided by y. That's like y to the 1 divided by y to the 1. Then I just have a z on the bottom here, so I'm going to make sure I know that that z goes on the bottom. Okay, because that's where it started. Well, 6 divided by negative 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Positive divided by negative is a negative. X squared divided by x to the first. Again, when I divide bases with exponents, I'm going to subtract the exponents. So that's x to the 2 minus 1. Then I'm going to have y to the 1 minus 1. Okay, and then my z is still going to go on the bottom. Okay, so I got to make sure I know that that z goes on the bottom, because that's where it started, so it's got to stay there. Okay? Well, now I've got negative 3. X to the 2 minus 1, well, that's just x to the 1, or just x. Y to the 1 minus 1, that's y to the 0, which is the same thing as 1. Okay? So y to the 0 is the same thing as 1. So I don't even really need to put that there, because multiplying by 1 isn't going to change this. So what happened is those y's basically just canceled each other out. Okay, because we had one on top and one on bottom. These x's kind of just cancel each other out. We had one x on top and two x's on bottom, so we ended up with just one x on the top after they canceled out. Then we said at the beginning the z needs to stay on the bottom because there was no z on the top to cancel out with. So it's negative 3x over z. Okay? Now that we've used our exponent rules, let me show you another way you can solve this problem. When I'm talking about canceling things, that might make it a little easier for you. Okay? Well, I've got negative 2 and 6. I could take a negative 2 out of this and cancel that. And 6 divided by negative 2 is negative 3. So that would give me a negative 3 on the top. And I got one x down here. That means I can cancel out one of the x's on top. Well, that would just leave me with 1x. X to the first. Okay, or just x. I can cancel out a y on top and a y on bottom. That leaves me with no more y's. And there's no z to cancel out on top, so that just makes me leave my z on the bottom. Okay, and that gives me the same answer as what I had before, just a different method to solve it. Okay, it doesn't matter which one of these you choose. Okay, this one is probably easier if you can understand how to do it, and it goes a lot quicker. Alright, let's go ahead and do one more example. Alright, example 6, they tell us to expand. Okay, so that means those are the distributing problems, okay, that some of us struggle with a little bit. So, we're told you these are going to come back. We know how to do these, so here are some more. Alright, so, part A, we're going to rewrite it to start with. 3x times 2x minus 4. Okay, now the first step says to change any subtraction to addition. Well, remember we talked about how to do that in our subtracting integers, where we're going to circle numbers we're taking away. Okay, well this 3x doesn't change, the parentheses don't change. Then I'm going to change my subtraction problem in here to an addition problem. The first part always stays the same. The minus goes to a plus. Then this 4 is going to change to the opposite of 4, which is negative 4. Okay, so we changed this subtraction problem in here to an addition problem. Next step says to distribute. Distribute, that's where we draw these arrows here. Okay, those arrows tell us to multiply these terms. So we're going to take 3x times 2x plus 3x times negative 4. Alright, now I have to go ahead and actually multiply these together. And here's how I do that. 3 times 2 is 6. then if I look here, I've got two x's. Got x to the first power and x to the first power. That leaves me with x to the second power because we add the exponents together. So x to the first plus x to the first times x to the first is x to the second. And we got our plus sign here we're going to bring down. And 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. And then I just have one x to throw on here. Okay, and third step says to combine any like terms if you can. Well, x squareds and x's aren't the same, so I am done. Cannot do anything else with that problem. Alright, and part B. Says we have negative 3x times 2x minus 4. Again, we're going to change this subtraction problem in here to addition. We're not going to mess with this because this isn't subtracting. This is just a negative out here. But this is a subtraction problem, so we're going to change it to addition. So the negative 3x stays the same, times, the problem inside gets changed to addition. The first term always stays the same, so 2x stays. Change the minus to a plus, and the circled number goes to the opposite, to negative 4 again. Next step is to distribute, so draw those arrows again. Remind us to multiply these things. So now I'm going to take negative 3x times 2x plus I'm going to have negative 3x times negative 4. I'm going to do the same thing I did in the example above, except this time I got negative 3 times positive 2. Well, negative 3 times positive 2 is negative 6, and then I got the two x's. So it's negative 6x squared. Keep your plus sign. Then do negative 3x times negative 4. Negative 3 times negative 4 is positive 12. And one of them had an x, so I'm going to throw the x on the end. And there's our answer, because we can't combine any like terms because x squareds aren't the same as x's. Alright, if you got any questions, ask. Otherwise, good luck on your homework.